Welcome on in, NFC East fans, or just fans of football in general. In this video, we are predicting what will happen in the NFC East. We'll break down the offseason moves for each team, and what place, 1 through 4, that each of them will finish, and much more. Be sure to let me know in the comments below how you think this will play out. And if you end up liking the video, consider subscribing, because we are predicting all the divisions, and we'll be predicting games all season long. We also do other sports like basketball too. So let's get into some football. The Washington Commanders, who finished 8-8-1, the definition of 500 last year, but that record still put them in last place in the NFC East, as the division proved much tougher than everyone thought. This year they have plus 1,600 odds to win this division, with their win total at 6.5. Isn't it annoying as fuck to tie? Yeah, my Bengals have tied before. It's happened a few times over the last 20 years, I believe. And it sucked every time, but for Commanders fans, in your case, you can point to that game as literally costing you the playoffs. They were better in the division, at least, than the Giants were. Yet, obviously, it was the Giants who got in the playoffs, while the Commanders sat and watched the Giants do what they had the potential to do last year. To me, there's no doubt that this will make for a very interesting series between the Commanders and the Giants yet again. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look at their additions and their subtractions. And let's just start with the most important position. Quarterback Taylor Heinicke is now in Atlanta, so they will look to Sam Howell to be their starter. Now, he only played in one game last year, and he was alright. But mainly, I just haven't seen enough of Howell to be able to definitely tell you that he is the guy there at Washington. And I think that's been Washington's main problem, other than the problem I'm going to get to in a second, is they just haven't figured out the guy at quarterback yet. Maybe this is the answer, but right now, I just don't know. I just haven't seen enough of him to know that. And also, I think they did Heinicke pretty wrong last year, but hey, he was winning you games and then you benched him anyway. For Carson Wentz again. Right tackle, Andrew Wiley comes over from the Chiefs, and that's really the most notable addition for them on offense. On defense, they were able to pick up mid linebacker from the Seattle Seahawks, Cody Barton. This is a sneaky good pickup, definitely coming off of his best season ever, as he had. As someone who watched Washington all year last year, I feel like I still know nothing about this team, especially coming into this year. There's 3 players to me that have big question marks around them. Obviously, Sam Howell is the first one. The second one is defensive end Chase Young. He's getting close to the point now where he's almost missed as many games as he's played. He's going into his 4th season, and it doesn't feel like that could even be possible because of all the time he's missed. And when you put him on to the defensive line with Montez Sweat, Darren Payne, and Jonathan Allen, that's a very good defensive line. We just need to see Young out there, and I mentioned this because he's questionable again, and it's like, man, I just hope that we can see this man get on the field. And my third question mark being Logan Thomas. This is a recurring thing. He's also has been dealing with injuries throughout the whole offseason and preseason. The guy has immense talent to play tight end. We just don't get to see it very much, or at least him at 100%. As for the running back duo, I do not worry about them. I think it is one of the better duos in the NFL. And I'm also not worried about the wide receiver core whatsoever. Those 3 are going to produce whether they have a guy at quarterback or not. I think Jahan Dotson is going to have a great season. I'm also very big on their draft class. Emmanuel Forbes was one of my favorite picks of the entire draft. I hear that there's some people that are saying that Washington is a sleeper team, that they're going to surprise some people, and they very well may. But I would be one of those people surprised. So yeah, this year I just don't see it. This year I have them at 6-11, 2-4 in the division. That is going to give them 3rd or tied for it. Them getting 3rd could only mean one thing, and yes, that means I see the NFC East coming back down to earth this season in terms of the record. The New York Giants finished 9-7-1 last year, and they were 1-4-1 in the division. Still got into the playoffs though, as they finished ahead of Washington. And this year their odds to win the division are a plus 850, with their win totals right at 7.5. The Giants proved me wrong at every corner last year. I didn't think they'd make the playoffs. They did. I didn't even think they would get third in the division. They did. And I definitely didn't think they were going to beat Minnesota. They did. Throughout the playoffs last year, there were 2 games that I got wrong. The Giants were one of them. That was the Giants at Minnesota, and also Cincinnati at Kansas City. They did get taken down pretty badly by the Eagles in the divisional rounds, but overall it was a very successful season. Giants should be very proud of what they did last year, and they'll no doubt want to build upon this. For this, let's look at who they added and who is gone from the team as well. Well, first things first, they traded a 3rd rounder away to get tight end Darren Waller, which they were in need of a tight end. And Darren Waller is extremely gifted. I've heard people, try to argue why the Raiders would do this. I haven't heard a great enough argument yet. The Giants won that trade, which the Raiders got a wide receiver with that pick. Trey Tucker out of Cincinnati. Salute to you, sir. Defensive tackle A'Shawn Robinson also came over from the Rams. They signed him to a 1-year deal. Also, linebacker Bobby Okereke came from the Colts. It's a scary D-line. The NFC East has probably the scariest sets of defensive linemen. And then they had wide receiver Paris Campbell come over from the Colts. In terms of starters, that's about it for the acquisitions. Most of this defense is drafted straight by the Giants themselves, and they have turned it into a very nice defense. I give them a ton of credit. And this defense is not going anywhere either. What I do think could be trouble for them this year is their offense. While I talked up that defensive line, the defense as a whole gave up the 8th most yards per game last year. So I think with this combination, these averages have to go up in their favor. Danny Jones had a career year in a lot of ways. Interceptions thrown, completion percentage, and the most rushing touchdowns that he's had in a season was 7. I think he'll have to improve again. Oh, I do see signs of improvements here as we move forward in this next half decade to a decade of Danny Jones being the guy. As for the defense, like I said, I gave him much praise on the D-line. But this team was in the bottom 10 in giving up yards per game on defense. And that is not sustainable to me. That cannot continue this year, especially if they're going to stay in the bottom half in points per game as well. So I think you know where I'm going with this. I think they take a step back from last year. I could be totally wrong again because I predicted them to only win about 5 games last year. But as we know, at least a few teams are gone from the playoffs from the year before. Now that it's expanded to 7, that number will go down. It used to be half the teams. Now it's going to be less. I think we'll be looking at somewhere a number between 2 and 3 each year. I think that the Giants are one of those teams. Therefore, I have them going 6-11 and tying Washington like they tied Washington in a game last season for 3rd or 4th place, whatever you want to call that. The Dallas Cowboys finished 12-5 last year with a 4-2 division record, finishing 2nd in the NFC East. Most of the time, that'll get you 1st in your division, but the Eagles are also in this division. This season, they're a plus 190 to win the division with their win totals over/under at 9.5. Cowboys made the playoffs last year, and they beat the Bucs down wild card round. They then lost to the Niners 19-12 in the divisional round. But hey, all but one team ends up with their season with a loss. So the Cowboys were extremely impressive to me last year. A top 5 defense, and the run game was also second to only Detroit's running back duo for the amount of touchdowns that they produced together. And this year I expect great things too. They did lose Ezekiel Elliott, who was a part of that running back duo. But let's take a look and see what they've added to the roster and what they've lost. So that means Tony Pollard will take over as the main starting running back. And I say that's great for the Cowboys. For years I thought he should get the ball even more than he was getting the ball. He has the potential to be a top 5 to 7 running back overall. They also brought in Brandon Cooks, which I think was a great pickup for the team, and now that wide receiver trio is very, very good. They were also able to get a steal of a trade with the Colts and bring in 5-time Pro Bowler Stephon Gilmore. another huge pickup for them. They did lose tight end Donovan Schultz, but overall, I like where this team is headed. I think this team has a chance to be even better. The defense is definitely going to be there no matter what. I mean, I feel like they have just about everything. They also re-signed Vander Esch, the linebacker. So everything looks really good to me on paper. And then I have to throw this stat out at you as well. There hasn't been a team to win this division, specifically the NFC East, for multiple years in a row since 2003 and 2004. The team that did it was the Philadelphia Eagles. You could look at that as a silly stat, but I mean 20 years is a long time for this to keep happening. Therefore, I am going with the Dallas Cowboys to win this division in a very close race with the Eagles. Dallas was 12-5 last year and 12-5 the year before. I have them at 12-5 yet again, way over their over-under for 9.5, coming in first place in the division, 4-2 in the division. I understand I'm going against the odds and everyone's rightful opinion of the Eagles, but bear with me here. The Philadelphia Eagles were 14-3 last year and 4-2 in the division, winning the division. And just in case you didn't know, they made the Super Bowl as well. This year they're at -135 to win the NFC East again, with their win total over under at 11.5. The Eagles in the playoffs last year beat down on the Giants and then beat down on the 49ers, who was clearly the second best team in the NFC all year long. Now they did lose literally all of their quarterbacks in that game, but it wasn't going well right from the start. The Eagles then lost in the Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs in an instant classic, one of the best Super Bowl games. Alright, so for this offseason, let's look at what they did in the draft, who they added, and who they've lost. First off, Miles Sanders is gone. He had an incredible season last year, but they were able to bring in DeAndre Swift, who has missed at least 3 games in each of his seasons that he's played, but he was averaging over 5.5 yards per carry, and with the best offensive line in football, if DeAndre Swift can stay healthy, he can have a season just like Miles Sanders. They absolutely killed the draft as well. I give them an A+. I don't see, with the positions that they were in, how they do much better than that. Jalen Carter, are you kidding me? They also brought in running back Rashad Penny to back him up just in case an injury does pop up, as long as he can also stay healthy. But if not, Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott are the 3rd and 4th string options. So they're loaded in the run game, and they will use it again. This team is ready to make another run. I don't think there's anyone that would disagree. Last year on offense, they were number 3 in total yards per game. And then on defense, they were number 2 in holding the opponent to the least amount of yards. Now they have lost some absolute key pieces to the defense, like CJ Gardner-Johnson, who is now with Detroit. Then linebackers TJ Edwards and Kaiser White have also left. Edwards is in Chicago now, and White is in Arizona. And in fact, their top 5 on the defense, obviously, and total tackles are gone. That was on the team a year ago. And this is where I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen. This defense is going to take a little bit to gel, even though I do think it's a great defense, don't get me wrong. But you can't lose that much and just be able to just reload like you're Alabama in college. Nakobe Dean is one of these guys that is going to have to step up because they lost a lot of their linebackers and their safeties. And same goes for Reed Blankenship too. Now, they were able to bring in Terrell Edmonds from the Steelers. That's going to help out a lot. They desperately needed him at the safety position. This right here is why I have them going second. Now, I love the beginning of their schedule. They have a real shot to start 4-1 or maybe even 5-0. And then they have a just brutal schedule. You can make a case that there's a 9-week stretch or even longer in whatever you think in your eyes, that they are just on murderer's row for that period. Let me show you right here what I mean. But guess what? Of course, I have Dallas coming in first and Philly coming in second because I have Dallas winning the tiebreaker. I have Philly at 12-5, hitting that over 11.5 mark. But I could totally see them being 11-6. I mean, only losing 3 games this year is really hard for me to imagine. It really is. 12-5, 11-6. I wrestled with the 2, but I'm going with 12-5. Hey, thanks for checking us out. Like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube, or you can find American Sports on Facebook as well. Over 100 members and growing.